Hello everyone. So on this video I'm going to go over um, the immigration and how it affects the labor market. So we have immigrants who enter the labor market, and those are workers, so it's going to affect the supply side of the market. Okay, so when we say it's going to affect the supply side, you already know that we have those axes where we have here the price or the wages, or we uh, put like dollars, and then we have here the quantity or employment, right? Employment. And then we have the demand, we have the supply. So whenever we have immigration, then the side of the market that would be affected is the supply. But once it changes, like whether it shifts up or down, it's going to affect the variables on the y and the x axis. So it's going to affect employment and it's going to affect wages. Okay, so when we talk about immigrants, we are talking about a market that already have workers, right? So let's say in the US. In the US, we already have workers, and those workers are native born workers. So when we talk about immigration, then those are people who are not uh, born in the US, but they are coming to the labor market in the US. Okay, and there are different scenarios that can happen depending on whether those native workers are competing or complementing. Okay, so you can say competing with those immigrants, or they substitute those immigrants, or immigrants substitute them, right? Or they are complementary. Okay, so when we say complementary, that they have to complement those immigrants. Okay, and this would be definitely the good case, because like when they complement, so they are not affected by immigrants, but they are actually um, part of the labor market. So when we look at this case here, where they are perfect substitutes, so we are talking about immigrants and natives, they are perfect substitutes. Okay, so perfect substitutes means that those who are coming from outside of the US market are actually taking the jobs of the natively born workers. Okay, so what's going to happen here, as the immigrants come to the labor market, the supply curve is going to shift towards the right. We used to be here at this equilibrium point where the wage rate was W0. This is the amount of employment, or in equilibrium. So once the immigrants come in, there is a shift in the supply curve by the amount of immigrants. Okay, so they are taking these jobs, the immigrants are taking these jobs, and they are taking this wage rate. For the native workers, they are actually, their employment is gonna drop. So they used to be employed here, but once we get immigrants in the market, their employment is gonna drop all the way to N1. Okay, so the wage falls from W0 to W1, the total employment increases from N0 to E1, right? So we have now, we used to be at this point, which is N0, the new equilibrium point is at E1. So employment increases from N0 to E1. Okay, at the lower wages, the number of native workers who work declines from N0 to N1. So there is a drop in the native workers because they have been substituted by the immigrants. This is just a case, but there could be another situation where they do complement each other. Okay, so when they are complements, then a different situation is going to happen. So now, again, we are at, this is the equilibrium point. Okay, we have a labor market, and this market has supply and demand for native workers. And now suppose that we have immigration, and those immigration are making the native workers more productive. Okay, so they are complementing the immigrants and they are becoming more productive. Okay, so this means that there would be a demand for native workers, right? Because they are complementing the immigrants, so there is an increase in the demand. So the demand curve shifts towards the right, and also as the demand increases, the wage rate is going to increase. So again, everything that you see in this graph is all about the native uh, workers. So this leads to a higher native wage and an increase in native employment. So there is an increase in their employment as well as there is an increase in their wages in response to the inflow of immigrants in the labor market. We could have a different situation where they are immigrants and native are perfect substitutes, but we are talking about a long run. Okay, so in the long run, so in the previous graph, we kind of we were talking about a situation where we have an equilibrium here, but then there has been an increase in the demand for workers, right? So there is an increase in the demand for workers, but also there is an increase in the supply as the economy expands, right? So it's not just about production, but they also expand in terms of adding more capital, more infrastructure, more bridges, more tunnels, more and more. So this means that they are taking advantage of those immigrants who are coming into the labor market. Okay, and because of that, then we would reach a situation where we have an increase in employment with the same level of the initial wage rate. Okay, so there is an increase in um, the employment level but maintaining the same wage rate. So the influx of immigrants, which leads to a shift in the supply curve, at the beginning it's going to lead to a drop in the wage, but over the long run, as the economy expands, right, then we are going to have more production, more demand on workers, and the demand curve is going to shift towards the right. So you can think of this graph as 1, initial equilibrium, 2, which is the increase in the supply of immigrants and the wage is going to drop, 3, where the economy expands and needs more workers, so the wage rate is going to go back to their initial level at point 1. So it's like you start from here, you move down, you move back up. Okay, so in this diagram we have a scatter plot between the change in log of weekly wages, like percentage change of weekly wages, and the change in immigrants share. So this one is telling us, and again, like there are different views about immigration, but according to this paper by Borges in 2003, there is a negative relationship between the increase in immigrants share. So as we move towards the right, there is an increase in immigrant share, and as this increases, the wage is gonna drop. And this is obvious from this negative relationship, right? It's a negative relationship, and it's showing that there is a negative relation between immigration and percentage change in wages. Two extreme situations. Again, those extreme situations reflect the different views about immigration. Some people are saying it's good, others are saying it's bad. So, for example, here on the graph on the left, here we have the demand curve as implied by Marian natural experiment, and this one, in this experiment, as you can see, they found that immigration does not affect wages. So the immigration did not change the level of wages. At any level of employment, we have the same W star. So according to this study, they were saying that the labor market is perfectly elastic. Okay, so there is no change in the wage rate. The wage rate is going to stay the same. The demand curve, on the other hand, on the right side, as implied by the study of Pennsylvania, NJ Pennsylvania minimum wage. Basically, it's saying that any increase in the minimum wage, does not affect the level of employment. So the level of employment is going to be stuck at E star. Okay, why is that? Because according to the study, it is basically saying that the demand curve is perfectly elastic. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and we're going to continue in the next video.